All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee. Everything School HQ. Fall camp season is upon us. Matt Green coming down tomorrow. The good folks listen to this on their morning commute here on a Wednesday. Guess what? You're gonna be rolling in, and you just fire up YouTube, whatever. You're gonna see your favorite team potentially doing warm-ups, doing actual fall camp things, doing drills. Your 5-star that you have waited for months to see, he's going to be out on the field, on the practice field, doing stuff. And I am going to watch every second of fall camp videos, as limited as they are. Fall camp is here, and this weekend especially was difficult, where it's like, man, there is nothing on. There is nothing. We are in the doldrums. I watched the Braves, and that was cool, but like, you need something else. You need football, you need basketball, you need whatever, but like, I'm officially in getting antsy season, and I am very, very glad that fall camp is here, because I can just obsess over position battles and everything else that are going to take place over the next 2 to 3 weeks here, because it's going to be an absolute delight. And not to mention 6'8", 330, 4-star, top 5 offensive tackle in the 2024 class, Bennett Warren, picking the Vols over Michigan and Texas A&M to solidify the Vols left tackle spot going forward. Many are saying, oh, what about the trenches? I don't know about Josh Heupel and the trenches. If only Josh Heupel would land someone in the trenches. How about a 6'8", 330, 4-star out of the great state of Texas? Fellow University of North Georgia, Matt Green is here. Alumni Matt Green is here. Matt, good evening. How are you?
Good evening, sir. I like that little jab you threw in there. And I think, hey, this is what they got to do. They got to start to get those big-time players on the offensive line and the defensive line. Can't stress the defensive side of the football enough. But, it's a process. Heupel's definitely got Tennessee going in the right direction. But you're definitely right about sports these days. Like, the Braves are really just carrying any sports interest I have these days. I was watching ESPN. I had pickleball, I think, on ESPN, and slam ball on ESPN too. It's like they're struggling to find anything to put on.
It's it's a struggle. Also, before we even do our how many days until college football, Matt Green? Because it's gonna make me happy when you say this number. It's gonna make me happy. How many days until college football?
Well, and to tell everyone, there is college football. There's some out there. There's some Thursdays, some week 0 stuff, but like, this is till the actual first Saturday when everyone's in action, week 1. We got 31 days, sir. 31 days till college football season. It is right around the corner, basically right at 1 month. Best 31 of all time for my money. Well, let's see. Let's put this in a trivia question. He's one of 2 players to ever win the Chuck Bednarik Award twice.
At Georgia?
No, not Georgia. But best 31 of all time in college football.
Best 31.
Do you know the 2 guys that have won the Bednarik Award twice? Don't be Googling it over there, though. I see you on your computer. I see you on your computer over there. I wish I could tell you the answer.
I have no idea.
The first
I was also
2
just
awards.
Googling number 31s in college football.
Pat Fitzgerald won the first 2 Chuck Bednarik Awards, but the only other 2-time winner, Paul Posluszny of Penn State. That's the best 31 of all time for my money. For Georgia, I'm thinking.
Hold on, Paul Posluszny, the best 31 of all time?
Posluszny was a baller at Penn State, man.
He's a linebacker.
2-time Bednarik winner. I mean, 31's a linebacker, running back type of number.
He's a linebacker, man.
Who's better? You got to give me one that's better.
Jamal Lewis.
I mean, Jamal Lewis was good, but was he an All-American at Tennessee? He was a good player. Posluszny he
won a national title. Second team All SEC in 1999, SEC Freshman of the Year in 97.
What is Posluszny, like a 3-time All-American?
He ran for 1,300 yards his first year at Tennessee in 97, and he dealt with some injuries and stuff like that. But
his freshman year was his best year. Yeah, he had some injuries. That was definitely the best 31 I was thinking for Tennessee. 31, it wasn't a strong one. Didn't necessarily disrespect anybody out there. I think Tyson Browning, like I kind of dig a little deep for Tyson Browning. I mean, Georgia fans remember Tyson Browning. The 2003 LSU game in Death Valley caught like a 90-yard screen pass in the fourth quarter to tie the game. But yeah, then Skylar Green, Georgia fans don't need to get into how that 2003 LSU game ended.
Oh, I couldn't tell you. That was a long time ago. That was 20 years ago.
That was Saban's first national title, 2003 LSU. They beat Georgia. It was like 17-10, I think, through like a.
Was that a Shockley year?
No, that's David Green. Odell Thurman actually rocked the court. I think was that Matt Mock?
Matty Mock?
Not Matty Mock, but Matt Mock for LSU. I want to say that I could be confusing it, but yeah, they threw like a touchdown with like a minute left, and that's how they won. And then they I think beat Georgia pretty bad in the SEC championship the second time they played that year too.
Happier times.
Yeah, what can you do?
Happier times for everyone involved. I saw like someone posted the Georgia coaches like lying face down after the prayer in Jordan Hare from a couple of years ago, and I forgot the context, but I saw it and I'm like, do I print it out? Do I save it? Do I keep this handy just in case for this fall? And kneeling? Do I keep it handy? Could we recreate that moment this fall?
Hey, who knows, man? They can't be flexing with Auburn's moment though. You know, that's like these teams that have the college football playoff trophies in their commitment edits, and they've never won a college football playoff. It's like you can't just be flexing someone else's accomplishments.
Would you, as a Georgia fan, would you dislike it more if Tennessee just blew you out? Like it was like just got away from you and the game just turns into a nightmare and it's like 37-10 or whatever? Or would you rather lose the way Alabama lost at Tennessee? I'm not saying Tennessee's going to win this game.
I mean, you'd definitely rather lose the way Alabama lost. Because, I mean, Alabama fans even have like that pass interference there at the end to look back on. Like, because, I mean, that was a little questionable. Like, I don't think it was like a bad call, but it was an interception that Alabama had and returned it to midfield, you know? So there was,
it wasn't
like
a bad call. It was just late. It was just weird because it seemed.
So if I'm an Alabama fan, I feel like we got hosed. You know, I'm sure that's what they think. So in terms of just getting absolutely run out of the building, like you can still go home and be like, we were the better team, but whatever happened and we lost. Like getting run out of the building is like, oh wow, is Tennessee on our level now? Like that's got to make you think, you know. So I think anyone would rather lose. What was it, 51-48? Was that the final score?
I believe so.
I mean, and that's obviously like a way more fun game. I experienced. I want to say, what was it? 2007 LSU or Georgia, Tennessee, of just getting run out of the building, and
52-49. I was like, it didn't sound right. I was looking at that. I was like, I feel like it was 52-49. That was it.
Yeah, so I think who'd rather get blown out than lose?
Well, if you get blown out, you could just say it wasn't our day. It was just a dumb like they got, and then Georgia quit, or Georgia was like, yeah, we're done. We're pulling back here. Like this game got away from us. Who cares? We flush it. It's hard to flush the games where you're in it until the very end, and then you lose in a gut wrenching fashion. I don't know. I feel like you at least played well. It's like you could feel like, oh, you know, everything came together for them this year, and so they beat us by 3. Well, see, like I would rather lose to Georgia in Neyland by getting blown out in the second half than lose on like a last second Georgia Carson Beck bomb at Neyland. Like I would rather lose. See, I don't know. I just obviously the Josh Dobbs, the Hail Mary, like that sucks, but for someone to just come in, like, say, when was the last time Georgia got, like I guess Alabama, 2015, someone just come into your home stadium and your crowd's packing it in the third and fourth quarter, like emptying out the stadium. Like, no, there's nothing worse than a team dominating you on your own field. Matt Green, we have a couple of news items here to get to from Nigel the Nighthawk over there at the University of North Georgia before we move into our Pac-12 preview, whatever is left of the Pac-12. Our final Pac-12 preview maybe ever on this very program. But speaking of the Pac-12, Colorado, since we last recorded, made the jump to the Big 12. Arizona, I believe, is meeting tonight to discuss their future because the Pac-12 presented their proposed or whatever is a possible TV deal, and it seems like it's going to be streaming, if anything, with a little bit of ESPN. So we wondered for a while if it was going to go full streaming. I think it's probably smart to have some streaming as an option, like you get ahead there, but like to just do what the Pac-12 and is headed towards, Matt Green. I mean, what are your thoughts on Colorado bolstering the Big 12, as they are now at 13 teams once Texas and Oklahoma leave this offseason? And does Arizona make the most sense to you as that final 14 team as they reconsolidate and build a pretty strong, at least, conference? Like, obviously not the same as the SEC and Big Ten, but still a very strong conference from top to bottom, especially in basketball. But what do you make of all of it right now?
Specifically, Colorado going to the Big 12, I'm all for it, but that's because I grew up with Colorado in the Big 12. I wish they'd bring Nebraska back to the Big 12 too, while we're at it.
Well, but Nebraska should really consider. I mean, the money is just why. Like, that's it. It's like when people are like, why doesn't Maryland go back? Or why doesn't Nebraska go back? It's like, it's the money. Like, yeah, they could win.
It's also like Nebraska, Oklahoma was such a big thing too. So it's like Nebraska, if they come back, they're not even really coming back to the same Big 12 either. So... but this is just kind of a bummer to me, man. I feel like the Pac-12 is, I think, over the last decade or so, clearly been the weakest of the Power 5 conferences. Like, I think people talk about it like it's some TV deal, like marketing or whatever. Like, that's why they haven't been in the playoff, this 14 play, like, as if, like, if there was just a one-loss Pac-12 champion, one loss or better Pac-12 champion, they'd be in the playoff every year. Like, there's nothing inherently, like, keeping the Pac-12 out. Like, Washington got in, Oregon got in. If you're just a one-loss or better conference champion, the playoff wants to put in all these conference champions. Like, that's the cleanest way to do it. So it's just they've had a lot of 2 and 3 loss conference champions, and you're not going to get any playoff access in the 4-team format, unfortunately for them. But I feel like we still need a conference on the West Coast. Like, there's a reason all these conferences are broken down regionally, and obviously UCLA and USC, that's a done deal. Like, they're already going, but it's a bummer because there was a reason we put all of these all these teams out here together to begin with. So I would be more down if the Pac-12 was absorbing more of these Big 12 schools and like creating one giant, like, west of the Mississippi type of conference. You know what I mean? Because there aren't as many schools, so it would be kind of quantity over quality, you know. But I don't know. I guess this is the writing on the wall basically for the Pac-12, and we've seen all the TV contract negotiations and just how terrible of a deal the Pac-12 seems to be getting. Like, it's only a matter of time, I guess, until they just get picked off one by one. One thing I want to throw out there to you, when someone says the 4 corner schools, do you automatically know what that means?
Yes.
A buddy of mine, not putting him on blast or anything, because it wasn't even a dumb thing to say. He was like, the whole time people said the 4 corner schools in the Pac-12, he thought they were talking about Washington State, Oregon, and Oregon State, because they're the 4 that are up in the corner. And I was like, that's hilarious. Like, I couldn't even hate on that, because it's like, I know I see the logic right there. But
couldn't he also do the corners? Like, it didn't say northwest corners. Like, it could have been the southwest corners. Like,
but it is like, I feel like the state of it specifically makes like a corner, like the Northwest United States. You know, it's like kind of more than the East Coast does. You know, there's like a legit like corner in the state of Washington. So I don't know. It's just a funny thing to say. But in terms of like, I guess what's going to happen.
Counting at home, by the way, it's Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah. Those are the schools, yes.
And those, and if they're like the master plan, like you've said a bunch, is for the Big 12 to be the premier basketball conference. Mm-hmm. Like, Arizona definitely fits that. But if you're getting Arizona and Colorado, like, you know, might as well bring Arizona State and Utah with them. Get Utah, BYU playing. I mean, Utah and BYU have been playing every year without even being in the same conference. So I guess the conference affiliation doesn't necessarily matter for that rivalry. But yeah,
I think that's another point of this is like next. There's so many levels of petty and interesting things here where it's like it's just always moving, and I don't want to go too down this rabbit hole because it's going to be, you could throw this out the window tomorrow based on what might happen. So I don't want this to be outdated. in that regard. But like, I just look at it where you see the report. Utah, like they make sense for the Big 12. Guess what? They don't want to be seen as following BYU into the Big 12. So it's like they might not do that just for optics. And then you have Arizona State. It's like, hey, guess what? They have the same board of regents or whatever. Northern Arizona, Arizona State, and Arizona are kind of grouped together. So it's like if Arizona leaves and leaves Arizona State behind, how are their people going to deal with that? Because it theoretically should be a package deal. So when Arizona looks like they're heading to the Big 12, does that mean the Big 12 is going to take Arizona State too, and then Utah, and then you're good at the 16 number, and then you stick. But then what does Washington and Oregon do? Oregon's too big to just like be left behind in the remains of the Pac-12. Like, I understand where that point of emphasis of like, hey, Oregon and Washington look at this whole situation. They're like, we're good with the Pac-12 because we have easy access to the playoff every year now. Like with UCLA and USC gone, guess who's going to the college football playoff every year? Like that's us. Like we're in just prime position for that. And I understand that. And then you look at USC and UCLA, that story this week where the great reporter Nicole Auerbach at The Athletic did a deep dive into how travel is going to work for UCLA and USC in the Big Ten. Spoiler alert, it's a mess and going to be a disaster. You read this whole thing and you're like, oh, this isn't lasting. And if it does last, guess who's getting cut? All these Olympic sports, all these other sports, like you're just going to like it. You're having people join up, like different schools riding together. Like you read the story here and you're like, this is insanity. Like this only makes sense for football, and they're making these decisions that affect every sport and everything else. So I'm like, they're not just going to run with the USC and UCLA in the Big Ten for years and years. Like they're not going to have just two isolated West Coast schools. So like, I don't believe where it's like the Big Ten's not interested in Oregon and Washington. I'm like, they're not yet. But if the Pac-12 gets picked apart here over the next couple of days, they're going to be spilling blood in the water. What I ultimately hope is they don't go to the Big Ten, and I hope the monopoly, the fear of the monopoly type deal of the conference, the antitrust stuff of these super conferences that I think Greg Sankey has talked about, where it's like that's part of, you're getting into dangerous territory when you get over 16 conference members, and what that means I'm not well versed enough in that, but it does seem like that's something that scares them. And then you're like, okay, the best case scenario is the Pac-12, the remains, join up with the ACC because regionality doesn't matter anymore. But at least you could divide it up where you have the Atlantic Coast part and the Pac-12 part, and then you meet up in the championship game, and that's still a really good conference. That has Clemson, that has Oregon, that has Washington, that has Florida State. Like, it sounds weird and insane for us who grew up in just regionality and what college football was, but like, I think that's a better scenario than being down to like 3 conferences and a power 2 and then just one kind of power 2.5 type deal. Like, I would prefer that, but it requires a lot of people to moving parts. And this continues to be such a mess because everyone is looking out for their own best interest, the alliance, everything else. You can never get everybody on the same page. Like it always just, you never, Colorado, I was blindsided. They were going to wait for the numbers to come in, and then they don't, and they're out. They're like, no, we waited too long. We're going to jump out of here. You're like,
to be fair, losing Colorado, that doesn't necessarily just destroy the conference, right?
Yeah.
Like Colorado's not like the biggest brand ever. Obviously,
I think San Diego State might be an upgrade.
USC and UCLA are huge to lose, but yeah, I mean, I feel like that would be my preference. If we can somehow keep this Power 5, and maybe they all go to 16, and maybe we get San Diego State and Fresno and Boise State, and just try Colorado State. Maybe they want to go to the Pac-12. Like, just in whoever's really wanting to play the big boy game. Like now we have, what is 5 times 16? Quick math. What is that? 64?
Yeah,
60. I think I did that quick.
Yeah.
It's like we got 64 teams that playing legitimate Division I football. Like I'd be cool with that. You know, Notre Dame figures out where they want to go in the Big Ten or the ACC or whatever. But like if we just can somehow get them all up to 16 instead of like I don't think it's a good thing.
Notre Dame could end a lot of this by just joining the ACC. Like if they were like, we're stabilizing the ACC and we're joining up, you're like, oh, cool, okay. Then this thing might settle down for a little bit. That would make Florida State
get West Virginia and Notre Dame in the ACC where they belong. Obviously, Notre Dame belongs in the Big Ten, but I think it's not good for the sport if the entire Pac-12 just gets poached
Yeah.
And every conference just has, not every conference, but multiple conferences just have some little West Coast branch of the Big Ten and of the ACC. I just don't think that's a legitimate option.
No, I don't think so. But we'll see what happens because I'm sure tomorrow it's going to be more craziness, and we'll find out what Arizona's fate is in the Pac-12 sometime this week potentially. So there you go. Matt Green, you have a big year 3 topic that you wanna embark on here before we get into our Pac-12 preview.
Yes, sir. I was crunching some numbers because I was talking with my brother the other day, and I was saying I'm all about the year 2 head coach. I think I'm a broken record here with how the guys do in year 2. There's a big spike with a lot of head coaches, a lot of really good head coaches in year 2. But what about year 3? What happens in year 3 after we get this spike? All right, so I have 13 head coaches. I don't know if it's every coach, but I think it's every noteworthy coach I could come up with. 13 head coaches since like 2000 that have increased the win total from year 1 to year 2 by at least 4 games and won double-digit games that season. All but Sam Pittman, I guess, won double-digit games here in year 2. So I'm going to run, because we talk about these year 2 head coaches a lot, and I think it blows your mind of how many there really are that just take off in year 2. Bob Stoops, 13-0, won a national championship. Jim Tressel, 14-0, won a national championship. Mark Richt, 13-1, won the SEC, finished ranked 3rd. Urban Meyer, 13-1, won a national championship. Gene Chizik, 14-0, won a national championship. Will Muschamp, 11-2, I think finished top 3, top 4 that year, top 5. Kirby Smart, 13-2, lost in the national championship. Dan Mullen, 9-4, year 2 at Mississippi State. Mel Tucker, 11-2, year 2 at Michigan. Sam Pittman, 9-4. Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss, 10-3, year 2. All of those head coaches won more than four or more games than they did the previous year. We got Josh Heupel down here currently in year 3. He did the same thing. Josh Heupel, Tennessee just went from 7-6 to 11-2 from year 1 to year 2. The only 2 head coaches of the last like 20 years that have won more games in year 3 than they did in year 2 were Nick Saban in year 3 at Alabama, and they won a national championship, and Pete Carroll at USC, year 3 at USC. Of all the coaches that had that actual year 2 spike, because there's some coaches that like don't fit this qualification. Like you look at a Dan Mullen at Florida, or like a Chip Kelly at Oregon, or LSU, Saban at LSU. A lot of those guys had solid year 1s that went into a good year 2. Of the guys that actually had just the mediocre year 1 and then took off in year 2, they on average, all even including the 2, Saban and Pete Carroll, all these guys averaged to 2.5 less wins in year 3. So I thought that was a really interesting stat. So you got Josh Heupel here at 11-2, 2.5 wins. Are they an 8-win team, 9-win team in 2023? It was just interesting how many of these coaches, where do you sit on Josh Heupel in year 3?
I've said 9-3 for a while. My gut says 9-3. I think the over/under is 9.5, right?
I think that is right.
Yeah, I tend to go under. I mean, here's the thing with Heupel in this year. What will ultimately decide, like the Florida game in early will tell me if they hit the over. Like if they win at Florida, then they're probably going to take care. They're going to be rolling. They get UTSA at home right after, and then they get South Carolina, and they'll win both. And then you're really cooking. Then it's like, I still think right now I would lean towards them losing both Bama and Georgia this year. And then I think they'll be favored in every other game. So 10-2 is probably realistic, but I just don't see that. My gut tells me they lose the 2 big ones, and then they either drop to A&M at home, at Florida. Still strikes me like until they do it. It's been 20 years. Like I can't get there. So we'll see what happens. Mizzou, Kentucky, all those games, they don't worry me. This feels like a 9-4 type year where they go 9 or maybe 10-3, where they go 9-3 in the regular season and win their bowl game, or they lose their bowl game because they play a big team or injuries, whatever. But like that's kind of where I'm at, and this is kind of 2024 and 2025 they could win a national title. They'll be in the blue chip ratio. They'll have Nico. They'll have talent, a lot more talent, and a lot of these 4 and 5 stars that have been in the program for 2 years at that point, they'll be more ready to go, more depth. I just can't shake the feeling that this is kind of a gap year, and it kind of speaks to what you're saying about year 3 and that kind of slight step back for a lot of these coaches. So I do think they actually win less, and that I would probably go with 9 being the case. And most Tennessee fans, by the way, feel that way, that this feels like a 9 or 10 win team, 10 at the most.
And it's amazing. And I think there's something to it. Maybe there's some, just typically some of that junior, senior leadership is on board for year 2. And then you lose some of those guys and you kind of have to bring in some new faces in year 3. But it's kind of amazing how many guys there are. Like, obviously, like Bob Stoops and Jim Tressel, they followed it up like 11-2, 12-2 seasons. Like Georgia with Mark Richt, they went 11-3 the year after. Urban, after the 13-1 national championship, in between 2 national title teams, had a 9-4 team. Like that, I think honestly, 2007 Florida is probably one of the best 9-4 teams in like the history of college football. Like a Heisman Trophy winning Tim Tebow and everything. But you also got like guys like Gene Chizik, went from 14-0 to 8-5. Like Will Muschamp went from 7-6 to 11-2 to 4-8. It's like you never know what you're going to get. Kirby Smart, 13-2 to 11-3. Like we talk about Dan Mullen and Josh Heupel a lot. Year 2, Dan Mullen went from 5-7 in year 1 at Mississippi State to 9-4 to 7-6. So does Heupel take that same step back? Dan Mullen also went 10-3 year 1 at Florida, followed that with an 11-2, and then kind of a misleading 8-4 because they did win the East and they were a better team that year, but they did actually win less games. The COVID year kind of throws things off, but I don't know. It's interesting. I'm curious. There's a couple other guys we got in year 3 that did increase their team's wins by more than 4 games and from year 1 to year 2. Lance Leipold fits this. They went from 2-10 to 6-7. Jed Fish fits this. They went from 1-11 to 5-7. But then there's also some guys like Sarkisian went from 5-7 to 8-5. Like he hasn't had that peak year yet. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what year 3 holds for Josh Heupel.
We shall see, Matt Green. Pac-12 preview. Is there a team to get things started here? Is there a team on USC's tier this year in the Pac-12? Because a lot of people are picking USC, Caleb Williams, back Heisman's, question mark. The defense a little bit better. Your old friend, Bear Alexander, on that defensive line. And I forgot who said this, but it's something that I think about a lot. Is just, I wonder if other schools look at it this way, where it's like, if it's like most of the time it's good to get a transfer, but like if you get a transfer from Georgia or Bama, you should actually hang up the phone. You're like, okay, if Georgia or Alabama was like, we're good, then maybe it's like a Trey Burton situation. Maybe it's like there might be more. Maybe we hang up. Maybe we're just like, there's a reason that the school who's developed defensive tackles better than anybody else was kind of okay with Bear Alexander moving on. Maybe that's like the ones like I forgot who said this, but I wonder if there are coaches around college football that are like, I think we're going to stay away from the Georgia Alabama transfers, because if they don't stick around, if Kirby or Nick don't want them around, or they can't play there, or whatever it is, maybe we should just take a pass on that one. I don't know.
See, I don't see that at all, because I think Georgia and Alabama are getting the best players around. So if a guy can't play at Georgia or Alabama, that does not mean that he can't play college football. Like I think you're definitely trying to get Georgia and Alabama's second stringers. Like, I mean, Alabama, that's 2 years in a row now with Jermaine Burton and now Tresman Marshall, like getting. Honestly, I mean, I guess you could probably say Jermaine Burton was a starter. He could have been a backup, potentially. I'm not really sure if he knew exactly what his position was or where he was on the depth chart, but Tresman Marshall was a clear backup for Georgia, and he's probably going to be starting for Alabama at inside linebacker this year.
That's true, but in terms of the top in the hierarchy, I feel like you're going to say no. There are multiple teams that are on the same tier as USC this year, right?
Yeah, without a doubt. I think there is there's definitely no hierarchy here. Like
Hmm.
Utah is over here. Anytime anyone's getting hyped up, they're just like, hold on. How many Pac-12 championships have you guys won the last 2 years? Like nobody's won more as many as Utah. And I think I just look at Oregon. I think I look at obviously Utah. I look at Washington. I think all of those
Oregon.
teams. Yeah, I think Oregon, Washington, and Utah are all right there with USC. I think those are the top four, and I think this conference is really going to be a kind of the same thing we saw last year, like 6 good teams and 6 bad teams. Like I think UCLA and Oregon State are also like I think they're a tier below those other 4, but I think they're still going to be good teams next year.
That's fair. I don't think there's a hierarchy either, and I think they're all very, very close, and they're all very different. Like all of them have different strengths, different weaknesses. Like UW's got just an insane amount of wide receiver talent. USD has the advantage at quarterback. You look at Oregon, I think the defense will be a lot better. They have a strong there's just different things, and Utah obviously being the most physical and defense first. It's just very interesting at top. And then Oregon State, who was just unbelievable running the football last year, and you bring in DJ Uiagalelei, like they have something to say. Did they win? They won 10 games last year total, right? With the bowl win over Florida, did they get to 10?
I believe so.
Yeah. So I mean, I think it's fair to throw them in that group of like, could they do it if DJU is back to his old self in Corvallis? The biggest unknown when you were going through your preview here for the Pac-12 for you, who do you think is still just the biggest unknown that you cannot get a read on going into this year?
Well, I mean, this is probably the easiest answer of any of the conference previews we'll ever do because the biggest unknown of any team in all of college football is Colorado. Like, I mean, what do they have, 70 transfers? Like, this is just the most unprecedented thing we've ever seen. Like, a program just be completely turned over from 1 year to the next. So I think it's obviously Colorado, and I mean everyone wants to not to get ahead of myself, but this is the team that everyone wants to watch this year. Like who knows what's going to happen?
Well, Colorado too, because like you said, the transfer stuff is crazy enough. They go 1-11. Like how much worse to first could they really do in year one? It's like it's all so unprecedented, but like I just want to see what Shedeur Sanders looks like as a Power 5 quarterback going from Jackson State. Like you have multiple important guys from USF and Group of 5 guys, and then you have FCS guys, and then you also have like real, just real dudes at Cormani McLean, who's gonna like start as a true freshman, the number 1 corner of this past class. Then you have the number 1 corner, maybe the potential Heisman type player in a year, and Travis Hunter, maybe playing both ways at wide receiver and corner. Like you just have so much. I mean, Cavassier Smoke, our old friend at Kentucky, is like going to be their lead tailback. Like Colorado is just going to be like a dream, just mine you know what I mean, where you just look at this and you're like, what is happening? Like Colorado is just going to be so fascinating. They bring in the Kent State head coach as their OC, Charles Kelly, who's an elite recruiter and good defensive mind, run the deep. Like it's a good staff. Like Dion's got a good staff. It's a bunch of turnover, and I think they're just going to be must-see. Like we get TCU, Colorado out of the gate here. Yeah, if you told me Colorado went 7-5, that wouldn't shock me. If you also told me they went 2-10, that wouldn't shock me. Like I have no idea what to make of.
But anything
Colorado.
better than 7-5, would that shock you? Or
Yes.
9-4 or something?
I think anywhere 8 and above would shock me. This is a tough schedule, and that's just too much turnover. And I don't think they're there talent-wise to get that.
Yeah, I think Shedeur Sanders is what I'm most interested to see because it's like, is this guy a legit Power 5 quarterback that was playing down because his dad was the head coach, or is he a legit, or is he going to be in for a rude awakening? Like not to compare him to like a Trey Lance or something, but like that's someone who was not playing the same competition as the other, big time prospects. And, we haven't really seen what he is in the NFL, so it's hard to say he can't play. But, year 3 now, and you've had to see this guy on the field. So I don't know. It's obviously not the same thing, but that's where I think if Shedeur Sanders is actually a legit Pac-12 quarterback, like that kind of changes where Colorado's expectations are immediately.
For sure. Best odds, when you look at the over-under for everyone in the Pac-12, Matt Green, the best odds to hit their win over or loss under, who do you think it is?
I feel like it's got to be Utah
Mm,
at 8.5, just
that's a good
because
call.
this team they just keep chopping wood. You know, it's like they don't want to hear they don't listen to the news clippings, and like they're never the sexiest team. Everyone's always talking about whoever's got the best quarterback. Oregon's uniforms. Oregon's always been the most exciting team out in the Pac-12 since USC's been down, and now USC is back. So now that's a new shiny toy. But Utah just keeps their head down and does the work. So I feel like 8-5. You get Florida in year 2 of a new head coach, but obviously it's at home. They got to come across the country. Like that's a pretty solid big time game that you do get at home. So I think Utah at 8.5 is a good bet.
I like that one a lot. But I also think if you're a Utah fan, you just are like, this is awesome. Like Utah thrives on stuff like this. Utah, that when everything goes astray for Kyle Whittingham, it's when their over under is like 11. When everyone starts to just give them actual respect as like the kings of the Pac-12 is when things go awry in Salt Lake.
Yeah,
UV's 8.5.
I mean they were I believe they were the media prediction to win the conference last year, and they
Okay.
did get it done. So, because I was looking at that, because I kind of thought the same thing. Like, I bet the media is never picking
Hmm.
Utah to win the conference, but they actually do give them the respect. And they I think they're just the most solid. Kyle Whittingham, is he the longest tenured coach in college football? Maybe at this point, been there since like '06.
It's either him or
Um,
Mike Gundy.
yeah, they're right around the same time. So
Yeah,
yeah, you just know what you're getting with Utah.
that's true. Matt Green, the league pass team. Last week it was North Carolina on our ACC show. Who do you think is going to be the league pass just most fun to jump into any of their games all year long? Who was the number one pick for folks who are staying up late on Saturday night this fall that are like, who do I want to watch in the Pac-12 week over week? Who will always be the most entertaining?
Well, there's obviously the Colorado Dion thing. Like I don't know if it's a train wreck isn't the right word, because it's not just like you're all bad, but you're just watching because you just want to see what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You're just out of curiosity. But in terms of like the team who I feel like is going to just be playing exciting games all year long, I feel like it's going to be USC,
Hmm.
because we know they don't play defense, so it's like this offense is going to be Caleb Williams is going to be doing crazy things, and they're probably going to be giving up 40 on the other side, and it's just going to be must see TV every Saturday night.
I think it's Oregon State for me. They were fun last year in DJU. Like, I'm so curious to see what he looks like. Jonathan Smith, one of the best offensive minds in college football. Like, I think Oregon State finds themselves in crazy games a lot anyway. I think they're going to be a really fun, good watch where it's like, are they going to spoil and find their way into the college football playoff? Like, I don't know. I think Oregon State is going to be fun no matter what because I think they have a really fun offense. And if DJU is back to who he was predicted to be coming out of high school, that team's suddenly just a lot of fun because they're already fun running the football. And then if TJ adds the aerial element there in Corvallis, then I think they're really cooking with something, and I think they're going to be really fun to watch.
Yeah, I like that. I really hope we can see DJ Uiagalelei look more like his 2020 self than what he's been in 2021 or 2022.
All right, Matt Green. Well, let's get into the over unders here. When we look at this Pac-12 2023 season, Arizona, who this might be their last season in the Pac-12 here, 5.5 for the Arizona Wildcats. Are you going over or under when you look at the schedule and what they're bringing back this year?
Well, I'm gonna have to stay true to the research that I've done here. So the year 3 head coaches,
Mm-hmm.
and Jed Fish, he got a little bit of a spike. Went from 1-11 to 5-7. I'm gonna say he disappoints, and they do not go bowling this year. So
Hmm.
give me the under on Arizona.
Arizona, Jed Fish is recruiting really well. He gets Elijah Rushing, who is down to, I think, either Oregon or Tennessee, and Arizona keeps him home. His brother is now on Arizona, 5-star edge guy. Like, he's recruiting really well, and it's actually working a lot better than I would have expected with that hire. It wasn't the most inspiring hire to me when they made it. And he's been all over the place. And I mean, he was with Chip Kelly at UCLA. He's been with the Patriots. He's been all over the place, but he's a good recruiter. And he's hired well. I just look at this group and this schedule. They go to Mississippi State. They got to go to Washington State, at USC, UW at home, at Stanford. Like, that's a toss-up game that you would rather have at home, I think. Oregon State comes in town. You get UCLA and Oregon State at home. That's nice. You get to Colorado, Utah at home, and you close at Arizona State. This looks like a 5-7 type deal, but I will say part of what makes Arizona a lot more fun now is their defense really sucks, and their offense is good. Like Jaden DeLora and company, they're fun. They're going to score a lot of points. The offense is going to be good once again, but it's kind of there's some strong Rich Rod vibes here with the current iteration of the Arizona Wildcats. Very different style with Rich Rod and Ched Fish, but what they're doing is it's kind of similar, where it's just they're going to have a lot of explosion on offense. They're going to score a lot of points. They're going to be a league pass team to watch, but that defense was horrific last year, and I don't see the pieces. Like Justin Flo can be on this defense, but I don't think they have the dudes on the defensive line in the back end that they're going to be able to stop anybody again. So I think Arizona's defense sucks again, and it prevents them from going bowling. So 5-7 feels about right for Arizona, but still step in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, last year you had 5 teams win 10+ games in this conference. Like, if that's going to happen, there's going to be a lot of teams losing a lot of games. It's just kind of the other side to it.
Yeah, Jacob Singer going to USC. Their best receiver last year, also not great, but you still got Jacob Cowing and McMillan, Territoria McMillan. They averaged 6. The defense averaged allowed 36.5 points per game last year. It's hard to win a lot of football games when you give up that many. Arizona.
I love seeing games like Arizona, Mississippi State too. Like they're like the conference equivalents, like the bottom tier of the SEC playing the bottom tier of the Pac-12. It's like makes sense.
Yeah, why doesn't Vanderbilt play Stanford every year?
They should. Is Vanderbilt Duke? Are they playing that? I think that is this year, right?
SEC preview in 2 weeks.
I'd have to look at the schedule. I think Vanderbilt does play Duke, but
well, they play Wake, which is basically kind of what they're doing.
Yeah, we need to see more games like that. It's like an annoying guy you went to high school with, like an annoying girl you went to high school with, and they get together. You're just like, oh, well, you guys fit. You guys fit together.
Oh man. Oh man. That was. I felt like
not throwing any shade at anyone specifically.
We'll see who reaches out to you after listening to this show, Matt Green. Arizona State.
There's somebody for everybody,
That's not true. There's all kinds of people that never find somebody. I'm lucky enough to find.
But there's somebody out there. You're not looking hard enough.
I like the positivity. Matt Green. Arizona State. 5.5 here. What jumps out to you about year one for Kenny Dillingham and his bunch?
Yeah, I just think Arizona State. I think Dillingham is just inherited a program that's just a cluster. You know what? Like I just think Arizona State. This is a big rebuild job in my opinion. Like it's not. They've got some history of being a solid program, but I don't see much coming from year one of Dillingham. Like I don't have the schedule right in front of me. I was trying to pull it up, but I just don't see much of Arizona State this year. Is Emory Jones still starting?
No. So Drew Pine came in from Notre Dame as the presumed starter. They've got another guy, Trenton Borgo, who's been there for a little bit, and then you have true freshman, our old friend Jaden Rashada, the former Florida commit. So maybe he gets some action. But they had 30 transfers come in because new staff. And it's also Kenny Dillingham's 33 years old. There's not a lot of track record here, right? Of these super, super young coaches, immediate success, especially on the Power 5 level. Like he's just diving in, man. He didn't start at SMU or TCU or whatever, man. He is going from OC. I mean, I first remember him popping up with Gus Bus at Auburn. Then he was OC with, I think, Willie Taggart at Florida State for a cup of coffee, and then found his way to Oregon with Dan Lanning, and now head coach at Arizona State. And good offensive mind. Like, I think it's a good long-term hire, but like 30 new transfers. I think the quarterback position's very much unsettled. Not a lot of pop to this offense, and the defense was pretty pretty rough last year, along with Arizona. So when you look at what they're bringing back, yeah, they gave up 31 points a game, so slightly better than Arizona, but not a lot of defense being played in the state of Arizona between either the Sun Devils and the Wildcats. But I think this is going to be a tough road to hoe. I would not be surprised if they're in that 11 to 12 range in the Pac-12. I mean, they get Oklahoma State in the non-conference at home. Fresno State, I think they lose both of those games. I think both those teams are better this year. USC early at Cal, a coin flip game you need at home. Colorado at home is a big one for them. At UW, at Utah, at UCLA. I mean,
I just don't see the wins.
I just don't see it. I think this looks like a 2-10 team to me, and they went 3-9 last year. So I think they got worse from what they were a year ago. It's too early to tell what's going to happen with Kenny Dillingham and the Sun Devils. I just think this year in particular, it's going to be a rough year. Like this team and one other team that we'll talk about in a second, I think are in for a rough 2023 in the Big 12.
This is going to be one of the games Colorado expects to win.
Yeah.
Like they're going to think like we can get that one.
Yeah. I think a lot of teams are going to look at that Arizona State in their schedule this year and be like, we can get them. So I'm going under there. I think you are as well. Cal, 5.5, kind of high here for the Cal Golden Bears to me. Justin Wilcox, this program's kind of sputtered in recent years here in the Pac-12. Good defensive mind. He's gone through like a gazillion offensive coordinators. Bo Baldwin, Bill Musgrave. They've had so many guys come in and out of this California situation, but it's just such a tough place to win. Like, I just feel bad for Justin Wilcox because he's been loyal. He stayed around for a long time. I think it's one of the sneaky toughest jobs in college football. Obviously, they've had some success over the years. There's blips with Javid Best and Marshawn Lynch and Aaron Rodgers and company. But like by and large, this is a really, really tough job, and they don't have the support that so many other Power 5 schools do. It's in Berkeley. It's a great school, and I mean, you look at the schedule. You get Auburn at home. You get at North Texas. I mean, Idaho, which is an FCS school now. You should win that one, but like at UW, at Utah, Oregon State at home, at Oregon. I mean, at UCLA, and then you get the big game against Stanford on the road too. I'm going under. I think this looks rough for Cal again. I think this looks like a 4-8 team. The defense wasn't even good last year, and I don't know. This feels like they're going to take a step back. We'll see if Sam Jackson V is going to start at quarterback, the TCU kid. Maybe that's good. They do have the one known positive is that Jaden Ott is a dude at running back, and Cal having dudes at running back is cool. So at least if they're not getting the wins and take a step back this year, he will be really good and maybe a lot of fun on Sundays. But if you have not checked out Mr. Ott on a late night game on the Pac-12, check him out this fall, because even if the wins aren't there, I think he'll be pretty fun to watch.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. Yeah, I think you threw out the idea of like what coach in the Pac-12 like potentially be on the hot seat, and like I was really not seeing any. I think Justin Wilcox is probably like the only one I could even really see in this conference getting fired at the end of the year, just because I'm not sure what he's supposed to do with like you said, with everything Cal's got going on, but they're the only program with a coach that's been around for a while that hasn't really done much.
I mean, 30-36 at Cal in 6 years, I think is just good. Like, he was the Wisconsin DC before he came over here, at USD for a little bit. He was an Oregon defensive back, and I remember he was rumored for the Oregon job a couple different times, learned under Mike Bellotti, but I think he's born in Eugene, so a lot of strong, but like Northern Cal, like he's in an area, but I think he should have unlimited job security. Like, it's just a really, really tough job, and he's doing the best he can. Like, it's just a tough job, man. I just don't know what else to say.
Not calling for his job by any means.
No. Colorado, 3.5, Macarena. This is sneaky difficult when you look at the schedule and what we were talking about with the unpredictability of Dion's bunch. Where are you leaning? Because I want to get your perspective on this first, and I want to see if you go over or under, because I'm not going to change my answer, but I want to hear your rationale first.
Well, I think first you have to look at the schedule, and obviously at a conference at TCU is not easy. Then Nebraska at a conference is not easy. Colorado State should be a win, but not necessarily just a pushover. So they don't necessarily have any cupcakes at a conference. So that's not a great start. And then obviously going at Oregon, USC right after that, Oregon State at Utah, at UCLA. Like there's going to be some challenges in there for sure. But 3.5 is just such a small number. And I think with what Dion has done, what he's shown and it's way different coaching at the Power 5 level than it is, FCS level. But I think with what he's shown, he's done so far, the improvement they did at Jackson State, I think I like him to get more than 3 wins this year. So I think four, maybe even 5 wins. It seems doable for Colorado. So I'm gonna go over.
That's fair. Kent State, Sean Lewis, like he put up like in their wins, he averaged 39 a game for the Golden Flashes this past year, and versus the Power 5, 15 points a game versus non-Power 5, 29. The offense was a lot better when they played unranked and weaker competition, but like they're going to play with tempo, they're going to play with speed, which will help this whole transition period. But I think Shedeur is going to be pretty solid. Like I think Shedeur and this group is going to be pretty solid. I think this is going to be a well-coached group. I think you brought in a lot of, it's not like young transfers, like McCaskill's another guy who came in late here, Cavassier Smoke. You have dudes who are coming in who've played a lot of college football in their time. And to only get 3 games better to hit the over there with, if Shedeur Sanders is good right away, and this offense is fast tempo, makes up for some of the weaknesses on the offensive line and everything else. And even if the defense is bad, the offense keeps them in a lot of games. And then the biggest wild card is like Travis Hunter would have been at Florida State, and we could be looking at him if he had picked Florida State over Jackson State. Are we looking at him as like, oh my God, like we are seeing Dion 2.0. We're seeing a Heisman front runner or a Heisman guy right now if he had been on the Power 5 level last year as a true freshman? Or would we be walking into a situation where it's like punt returning, kick returning, on defense, wide receiver, like he's unguardable, he's this, that, and the other. He's a Swiss Army knife. He's like just a dude, and he is just an unstoppable guy. If he is that in a Pac-12 where there's a lot of bad defenses this year in this conference, if Travis Hunter is a top 5 college football player right away, like Power 5 college football player, that's huge. That can be enough to get them into the over. Like, is he unguardable as a wide receiver? Is he just a sensation right out of the gate for the Buffs? And I am very, very curious. He might be the X factor for me. It's Shedeur and him, but like that, I think, is the biggest reason as to why I'm gonna go over. This feels like a 4-8, 5-7 team to me. I think they hit the over a little bit, and I think Travis Hunter is actually pretty elite right out of the gate here.
Yeah, I think that's the ultimate like X factor. If Travis Hunter comes in and he's that guy, like I think that's really, because I mean I didn't watch all of Jackson State's games last year. I watched the Celebration Bowl. I watched some of it, and it's like he wasn't like incredible, like just popping off the screen. So I feel like he's gonna kind of be a true freshman again, because now he's playing just. You're essentially making another jump. I'm not saying FCS is high school, but you're essentially making another huge jump in level of competition. So, I mean, maybe he just comes in and he's ready from day one, and he's the best player in the Pac-12. Like that's definitely possible. And yeah, like you said, with Shedeur Sanders and some of the other experience they have, they're probably not a good team, but 3.5 is a real low number. Is that's your first over?
That is my first over.
Okay, so we're in agreement so far. A lot of agreeing going on. Too much agreeing going on these days. I
know. We won't agree come college football pick'em. That we do know. Oregon, 9.5, Matt Green. Do you want to go first, or I can lead this one too?
Go ahead.
This is an over. I think Oregon's going to be really good. I think Dan Lanning and this group overachieved in year one. I think Bo Nix is looking at a Heisman finalist kind of campaign here. He made the leap with these Ducks last year. They're going to be able to run the ball well. They have a lot of dudes out wide. The offensive line's good. Their defense is going to be better than it was a year ago. Good schedule. I think this is a Pac-12 champion right here. And I think if I had to pick a favorite to come out of the Pac-12 and make the college football playoff, I think the Oregon Ducks are my pick right now. If there was going to be who fills the Big 12 gap, because if Texas doesn't make it through and Texas doesn't take advantage of this year, because I think you're getting two, like basically the way I look at it for this last year and what I would have looked at it with the college football playoff if we kept it 4 going forward was 2 SEC teams, a Big 10 team, or 2 Big 10 teams. Like you're getting 3 of those 2 conferences and then 1 outlier. And I think Texas is that outlier this year if they just take care of their business. But if they don't, I think Oregon is just right there to find their way in with their schedule and what they've got cooking. They get to avoid Georgia this year to start off the year, which is going to be good for the Ducks. But I am very, very high. They had a top 10 offense last year. I think it's going to be top 10 again this year. I think the defense is going to be a lot better too. So give me the Ducks to hit that over and to be potentially the best team in the Pac-12, like 38 and almost 40 points a game last year. The offensive line is just a lot of new dudes. Like, you don't have Noah Sewell and Christian Gonzalez, but 7 starters back on defense. I think the defense is going to be really good, and I think they're not going to miss a beat offensively, and Ducks is going to be awesome. So give me the Ducks to hit that over.
Our disagreeing is not going to start here, sir. I'm definitely all in on the Oregon Ducks in the Pac-12 this year. I think they have a lot going for them. On top of, obviously, I'm a broken record here. Year 2 of Dan Lanning. Can we talk about the Kirby Smart similarities with Dan Lanning? Obviously, that's who he learned from. But Kirby also had those questionable decisions early on in his tenure. People question him being an X's and O's guy, right? The fake punt versus Alabama. Some super questionable decisions by Dan Lanning in year 1, and they still managed to win 10 games, and they were right there, almost got into the Pac-12 championship. Obviously, we're not right there in terms of where they need to be to win a national championship. Got absolutely smoked by Georgia, but in terms of winning the Pac-12, I like Oregon. I think Oregon is my current favorite to win the Pac-12 this year.
There you go.
Go over as well.
Oregon State, 8.5, Matt Green. What say you?
I'm feeling a DJ Uiagalelei renaissance. I feel like the same thing that, maybe not the same thing Bo Nix did last year, but I feel like he just needed a new surroundings, right? Get back out to the West Coast. DJU, obviously a West Coast guy. Maybe he'll feel more at home out on the West Coast. But I think we've seen the talent there. He got better. Like, that's the one thing. I feel like he did improve from 2020 drastically from 2021 to 2022. He just still wasn't that guy to get Clemson over the hump, and they had a big time recruit that they could put in behind him to challenge him as well. So I just think, new surroundings. I think DJU has a much better year, and you talked about, their running game is obviously going to be Oregon State's identity. But I really like Oregon State this year. I'm going to go over on the Ducks at 8.5.
I agree, Matt Green. Are we going to agree on the Oregon State Beavers? Yes, we are. Because I think the Oregon State Beavers, this schedule, 8.5 is almost a lock for me. You get UC Davis at home, at San Jose State, like that's fine. San Diego State at home, and then you go to Pullman. That could get weird, but I think Washington State, who we'll get to, they lost a lot. I'm pretty dubious about the coup going in this year. They got to win. Then you get Utah at home, September 29th. That's gonna be a big, big game. I can't wait for that one.
Let's talk about this. Like, the games you just named, like the San Diego State's a quality, at a conference, not like a juggernaut, not a cupcake, but at Washington State, whatever. That team should start 4-0.
Yeah.
That Utah game you just pointed out, that's a weekday road game for the Utes on a Friday night. That, I think Oregon State could start 5-0.
And then you're at Cal. They'll be favored in that one. UCLA at home. They get that at home. At Arizona, okay. Arizona might be really bad. They will be favored in that game. At Colorado, they will be favored in that game. Stanford at home. They'll be favored in that game.
Those could be the 3 worst teams in the Pac-12 right there: Arizona, Colorado, and Stanford.
And you get them 3 weeks in a row. And then you get Washington at home late in the year, and then at Oregon in the Civil War to wrap things up. But like, you beat Oregon last year. Like, I think this looks like a 10-2 best case scenario, 11-1 schedule. But like, this is a really,
Did you just say 11-1? Wow. I feel like you look at that, 10-0 like doesn't seem like outrageous. Like a 10-0 start for this team. That's shocking. I didn't expect both of us to be this high on the Oregon State Beavers.
The Beavers are going to be good, sir. The Beavers are coming. Like, they're going to be good. I'm here for it. And I hope DJU thrives in Corvallis this year. I like it.
I've never seen a schedule just more kind of like perfectly mapped out for a team. Like, Utah is a very difficult game, but to get it on a Friday night, there's just something weird that happens on Friday nights. And then UCLA is one of the best teams, one of the better teams in the Pac-12, but to get them at home, like, this thing really does like work out for a potential 9-0, 10-0 type of start.
Matt Green. Also, there's a way. Like, what would this? I mean, there's a scenario where there's an immediate rematch in the Pac-12 title game. If Oregon and Oregon State run the gauntlet here, and then they get matched up in the final week of the season, they might have to do a redo. It might be an Auburn-Georgia situation for the Ducks and Beavs in the Pac-12 title game.
Oh man, that'd be a real bummer. Like, that's the one thing that I think from losing the divisions is getting an Oregon State back to back, because that's going to be an insane. Like, if those two teams are 10-1 going into the Civil War, I don't think they call it that anymore, but whatever.
Yeah.
Like, both in the top 5, top 8 or so of the rankings, like, it'd be insane. And then whatever happens, they play again next week. Like, that's not what we want. But with the Pac-12, like, I think we're going to have a lot of, like we saw last year, we had 5 teams win double-digit games last year. So I think we're going to have a lot of teams. So the chances of a rematch aren't necessarily just a foregone conclusion. But potentially like Ohio State, Michigan, in future years, getting that back-to-back would just be such a buzzkill.
I agree. Matt Green, Stanford, 3.5. I am going under. But why are you going under? Are we disagreeing here for the first time?
Tell me the Stanford schedule real quick.
Let me pull it back up for you.
You got it up?
Let me see. 2025 plus schedule.
Okay, I got it. Let's see. I've seen who they play out of conference.
At
like,
Hawaii.
Can they get 4 wins? Like, out of conference, at Hawaii, Sacramento State, and who's the other one? What am I missing? Notre Dame. The other, it's like that's where you were probably going to get it. So it's like racking up 3 cupcakes out of conference. No, with how good the Pac-12 is this year, you don't play all. Do they play all the preseason ranked teams? I think they do. USC, Oregon, Washington, Oregon State, and then add Notre Dame on top of that. Like, no, I'm with you here. I'll go under on the Cardinal as well.
They gave up 224 yards a game on the ground, 36 points per game. Just a humongous amount of turnover for Troy Taylor, who I actually think might be pretty good for them over the next couple of years. Just kind of that he's not Paul Johnson, but they're going to get back into we're playing some just high octane, fun offense that's built around 2 and 3 stars. Maybe Dave Clawson's a closer comp, but I think Troy Taylor might actually be a fun. Like, he's been really successful at the FCS level. And they're getting away from that pro style stuff that they've done with Harbaugh and Shaw and company. They're going to be fun. I just think it's going to be a lot of dudes that they just they're going to be a ways away. They're only returning 6 starters on both sides of the ball, and this schedule is just like you said. You get Notre Dame in the non-conference, even at Hawaii is not a gimme. At USC, Oregon, like I just looked through the schedule and I'm like, I don't see many wins. Cal at home maybe. But goodness gracious, I do not like the schedule for Stanford at all. This looks like 2-10. I think they go 2-10, maybe 1-11. I think they're the worst team in the Pac-12 this year.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think they are going to be at the bottom.
UCLA. This one was sneaky tough. 8.5 for Chip Kelly's Bruins. What say you?
Yeah, I agree. I think this one was a tough one. Obviously, you got Dorian Thompson Robinson is gone, and Zach Charbonnet is gone. Chip Kelly, we do trust, whoever he plugs into his offenses to get the most out of them. Is this Dante Moore? Is he going to be the starter? Is that what we think?
I mean, maybe Dante Moore, that 17th Garbers, who is in the rotation. I feel like there's so many Chase Garbers, Ethan Garbers. Like, it's hard to keep them all straight. One went to Cal, one went to UCLA, one's in the NFL now. A lot of Garbers over here in the West Coast and playing in the Pac-12. But could be him. Could also be Colin Schlee, transfer in. Potentially, I think he's the least likely based on what I've read. Either it's Moore or Garbers, but you also have Carson Steele, the running back from Ball State, coming in here. He's going to be a household name with this Chip Kelly offense, and he should be a lot of fun, but not really the same as Zach Charbonnet here for the Bruins. But I don't know. I think they're so hard to forecast because I think they had a big year this past year, and they broke through in a lot of ways. DTR was awesome, and I think he's just been there for so long. I mean, when you win 9 games last year with the kind of season that they had, which was the biggest program win total since 2014, I don't know. If you go full true freshman quarterback, he's going to go through growing pains. Like, that's just going to happen. And I think the going from Charbonnet to Carson Steele is a step back. I don't know. The defense was not very good last year, 29 points a game. I don't know. New DC, DeAnton Lynn. Maybe that helps. Excuse me. My gut just tells me this is going to hit the under and that they're going to be 8-4 at the absolute best. I'm going to go 7-5, and UCLA takes a slight step back this year. I think they're going to bounce back following year with Dante Moore a year older, but I think this is just kind of a gap year for the Bruins. There's a lot of talent at the top of this conference with Oregon State, Utah, USC, and company, and I just don't, in Oregon, Washington, I don't think they fit this year. I think they take a step back slightly. Give me the under.
Yeah, we agree again, sir.
No.
I'm afraid I agree, especially what you said. It felt like it was kind of a year things came together for UCLA. Like they were, I'm not saying they like climaxed last year or anything like that's the best they can do, but it felt like they're not going to be as good this year as they were a year ago. So yeah, I'm with you. I'm having the Bruins take a step back as well. 8-4 though, probably.
USC 10.5. Matt Green. I'm going to call it. This is where we disagree. I am going under on the Trojans winning 10.5 games this year. Am I right that this is our first disagreement?
You would be incorrect, sir,
Oh,
because
no.
I just don't. You can't. You got to play defense, and with USC, it's not a super difficult schedule. Like it in terms of like what some of these teams in the Pac-12 are facing, they do add Notre Dame on, like Stanford does, and they have to go at Notre Dame. But I like Oregon a lot this year. I like Washington. I like Utah. Like Utah has had their number. Like that, how many times in a row now has Utah beat them? Like they do get that one at USC, but I think this team has 10-2 written all over it because I just think when you're that flawed on one side of the football, like and this conference is really good this year. I think some of those Big 12s that Lincoln Riley was able to get through with Oklahoma, like where there was one other good team where they one year they got to the college football playoff by Baylor being their only ranked win, and they just beat Baylor twice. It's like we had no idea how good Oklahoma that was that year, but we know they were better than Baylor. So I think the Pac-12 is stronger this year than a lot of those Big 12s were, honestly, under Lincoln Riley. And I don't think being as flawed as they are on the defensive side of the ball, I think they're just bound to maybe not even lose to one of the other big names out there, but maybe just not show up a week against Arizona or against Arizona State or something, or Colorado. Like I just think when you don't have a defense, like you can get in a shootout with anybody.
That's fair. Like, he's very loyal to Alex Grinch. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the Todd Grantham stuff. Like, Dan Mullen sticking with Grantham for a little bit too long at Florida. Did that end up costing him at Florida, his loyalty there? I mean, you saw it at Georgia, Mark Richt, and his loyalty to certain guys, that it was just like, dude, you gotta cut bait. Sometimes it's hard, but loyalty can be tough. And Heupel hasn't had to deal with that yet, but he is a very loyal guy, and he's promoting from within, from his staff. Like, that's very important to him to keep his guys in house. And I wonder, just the defense is really, really bad once again, which I think it's gonna be bad again. You're like, you just burned 2 years of elite, best quarterback in the country play because you just refuse to address this defense. Like, it cannot continue to be the thing where you're just like, the thing about USC, that defense was bad last year, but they were also incredibly lucky. Like, their turnover margin, we talked about in the program, like, their turnover margin was stupid in the Pac-12. Like, they were elite. They were in a league of their own in forcing turnovers and not giving up any turnovers last year. That was their bread and butter. I don't see that that carrying over this year. I don't see them being that exceptionally lucky and forcing that many turnovers and the offense not turning the ball over to that extent last year. Like, their turnover,
hard thing to sustain for sure.
Yeah, they take a step back. They don't have the dudes. I'm not a believer in this defense. And you could sell me on, look, Caleb Williams was pretty amazing and he'll be good again. But this schedule for USC down the stretch, whoever did USC's schedule did them a gigantic disservice, because they are looking.
It depends, though.
Well, here's what I would say. This schedule is lining up where it's like, oh, the beginning of this season, it's going to be like USC is going to be put in the first college football playoff rankings. Everyone's going to talk about this start for USC. Caleb Williams going back-to-back Heisman. He's going to put up big-time numbers. This schedule just puts the overrated USC where everyone's going to be like, see, they're coming. They're bouncing right back. To have, folks, this is the schedule for the last, let's just go the last 6 weeks.
I'm not sure how I feel right now. You're just taking the words out of my mouth right now. I'm agreeing way too much with Chase Thomas right now.
I'll throw some Tennessee stuff.
Because I'm like, they're going to start 6-0.
Yes.
Caleb Williams is going to have 23 touchdown passes in the first 6 weeks. It's like clear back-to-back Heisman. Like, it's all going to happen. They're going to be ranked number 3.
Yeah. Maybe number 1 with how much they're scoring. Like, then you get at Notre Dame, Utah at home, at Cal, Washington at home, at Oregon, UCLA at home. I mean, they're not running through that gauntlet. Like, they're so backloaded with just important big games that I can't hit the over. I think this is a recipe for disaster where, like, they're going to be feeling themselves, feeling good. Like, we're cooking, we're 6-0, we're making it back to the playoff, and then just a gauntlet of a following 6-week stretch. And I just see 2 losses there. I think they go 10-2, and it's a disappointing, forgettable year. Caleb Williams is awesome, but a waste because you didn't address the DC and didn't address the defense this offseason when you could have.
There is another way to look at it, though. Like, having such a soft first 6 games of the season, like, might allow you to kind of come together. They're bringing a lot of transfers. Like, maybe this defense comes together, and by the time you're playing the best competition on your schedule, your team's executing at the highest level. So there is like some advantage to potentially, having all the good teams on the second half of the schedule.
Potentially. I just don't think it's going to go that way.
But yeah, USC. It's 5 out of 6 games. It's definitely, that's brutal.
Utah, 8.5. We talked about them a lot here. I think we're both going over, right?
Yeah, I think so. 8.5. I think that's easy. I don't know where I stand as far as this week 1 matchup with the Gators. Like,
what's the current line for that?
Oh, I think it was 4.5 or 5.5. I think no, I think it was like 7.5. I think when I saw it last week.
Utah 8 right now.
8, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then at Baylor in week 2, like that's not a super easy out of conference for Utah. I guess probably one of the more difficult out of conferences in this entire conference.
Florida's 1-7 straight up in their last 8 games on the road.
Florida's 1-7 in their last 8 road games. Wow, I did not know that. And this is the furthest they've traveled for a road game, without a doubt. I know they always talked about Florida never leaving the Southeast for like the longest time.
I mean, that's rough. Yeah, 1-7 straight up against the spread, last 8 games. So,
and they pretty much don't miss anybody. Like they got UCLA at Oregon State, at USC, Oregon at home, at Washington. Like they're playing everybody, but
a lot has been made about like Dalton Kincaid being out. I'm like, they're fine. Like they grow in trees in Utah for whatever reason. Cam Rising's back. I mean, they've won back-to-back Pac-12 titles. Jaquindon Jackson, I think, is going to be awesome as the number 1 running back. Like Keith Kuth, I don't know how to pronounce his name. We're going to go Keith because I'm a big Righteous Gemstones guy. And Clark Phillips is out. Like that, it's a loss, but like they're going to be near the top they're going to be near the top in the defensive side of the ball. Baylor maybe can be frisky. Florida maybe frisky, but like this just looks like a 10-2 schedule again for Utah. And then they might find their way back to the Pac-12 title game and win it again and just keep doing the Kyle Whittingham thing. But I'm not worried about Utah. Death, taxes, Utah, just hitting the over.
Yeah, give me the Utes.
Last 2
Cam Rising went from the most overrated player in the Pac-12 to the most underrated player coming into this year.
I still think he's kind of overrated. Like he's not. He's
don't
fine.
Don't sleep on him. Don't sleep on him.
I'm gonna sleep on him. Washington. The Washington Huskies. A lot of Pac-12 title love. Some college football playoff dark horse love. And Vegas likes them too. Second highest odds in the Pac-12 coming into this year. Tied with Oregon. 9.5 over under, Matt Green. Where are you at? Because I don't believe Oregon State, Oregon, and who else do we have hitting?
Man, are we doing this? Oregon State, and Utah.
Yeah.
Is that what you were going to say?
All 4 of them cannot win 10 games. I'm going under on the Huskies.
They did it last year, but I guess some of those are from the bowl game that got them to 10.
I think I'm leaning under.
You look at, I think it was NFL Draft Buzz I was looking at, of like the top 5 or 6 Pac-12 players in their rankings for next year's draft. I think of the top 5 players, 4 of them played for Washington. So you got Michael Penix, obviously, is getting some first round love there. The receiver, Rome, I forget I forget how to pronounce his last name.
Adunze.
Yeah, and then the 2 edge rushers are both getting some first round potential hype. So I think Washington is a super talented team. They got at Michigan State at a conference who, I mean, they might be a pretty bad team this year. So like they should run the table at a conference. But I'm kind of with you. I don't think all of those teams can hit the over on their schedules this year. So I think Washington's gonna be good. I think Michael Penix is good. I think 9-3 is probably what this team does. So give me, because also USC, we went under on USC, but they could still win 10 games as well. So I just don't know if there's room for all of these teams at the top. But I think Washington's gonna beat some people, but they're gonna lose a couple games as well. So yeah, give me the under, and we're gonna agree on like every single Pac-12 team.
The secondary stinks, and I think, it's gonna be nice for them to get Oregon and Utah at home. That's big. Like, and we should say, like, they averaged 40 a game last year, and I think the offense is gonna be loaded again. Kalen DeBoer is one of the best offensive play callers and offensive minds in the sport. I'm not sure about this defense. And also, here's the other thing: Michael Penix Jr. was healthy all of last year. He's had health concerns. Like, what if he gets banged up? That is very much in play. Do they get 12 healthy games of Michael Penix Jr. again? Because you can see how it gets unraveled very quickly if that's not the case here. But it's weird saying out loud, but I trust Oregon State more than Washington as a complete team going into the 2023 college football season. Also, just like their schedule a little bit more.
The schedule goes a long way for sure in terms of Oregon State. But I do like Penix a lot, so it's tough to pick against them. But yeah, I think someone's got to lose some games in this conference.
For sure. Speaking of losing some games in this conference, the Washington State Cougars, Matt Green, as we wrap up here this Tuesday night, Wednesday morning edition here on the Chase Thomas podcast. Matt Green, the Washington State Cougars, the forgotten team, Jake Dickert's group.
Not one of the four corner schools.
Not one of the four corner schools. 5.5 for you. I'm going under. What say you?
Yeah, I think we said at the top, like, there's going to be 6 good teams. There's going to be 6 bad teams. And I think Washington State is one of the bad teams. Granted, last year they were the one that that didn't fit either, that weren't the good team or the bad team. They were able to get to a bowl game. But, yeah, I'm with you. Like, Wisconsin at a conference, like, I don't like that. And getting Oregon State at home, at UCLA, at Oregon, at Washington. I just think there's a lot of losses on Washington State's schedule. So, yeah. Give me the under as well to complete the sweep. And I apologize to our listeners for us just sitting here agreeing on all the same picks. It's terrible radio.
Look, but we're also going to be honest. We're not just going to go the hot take route to disagree just to create some buzz here. That's not what we're about. We're about transparency and honesty. And unfortunately, we agree here. And I mean, Cameron Ward's gonna be a lot of fun. 3,000 yards last year, 23 touchdowns. He's back. He'll be fun. New offensive and defensive coordinators here. It always sucks when you see, like, obviously with Singer going from Arizona to USC, and then you see Washington State's starting left tackle, Jarrett Kingston's gonna be the starting left tackle at USC. Like, just I hate it's one thing to do the transfer rule. I hate in conference transfers like that. That just sucks. Like, you read that and it actually makes me mad that Washington State loses their offensive tackle to USC. Like, that's just, I hate reading that. Like, it actually annoys me. But they had the 3rd best scoring defense in the conference last year. They just lost I think this offense.
Yeah, something feels different about Washington State having, they got a good player. USC is like, oh yeah, we'll take him.
Yes.
As opposed to like Latavius Brini, like, doesn't play as much at Georgia, so he goes to Arkansas to get more ticks. It's like, it's the same thing, but it feels a lot different.
It does. But I got the under. This is a tough schedule once again for the Cougs, and they lose so much on offense, and Cam Ward can only do so much. I think the defense is still just pesky, and I think Washington State's going to be in a lot of games they shouldn't. Ben Arbuckle, we'll see what he does with this group, but I mean, the Cougs, they just have a ceiling, and they're just kind of coasting. Dickert's fine. I think he's a good DC, but there's not a lot of buzz. There's not a lot of excitement. Mike Leach got a lot out of this program. I don't know. It's just not the guy for me. Like, Wisconsin at home should be super interesting early, and how that game goes, because they did win at Wisconsin last year. People forget that one. We'll see how Pullman goes against the Cougs, or against the Beavs rather, at UCLA, at Oregon. I mean, at UW. It's just, this looks like a 5-7 group to me this year for the Cougs. Well, that'll do it, Matt Green.
Last thing, your champion. Who's in the conference championship? Are we gonna agree on this too?
I'm gonna go Oregon, Utah, and Oregon wins the Pac-12.
Okay, this is the one thing we'll disagree on. I got Oregon winning the Pac-12 and beating USC.
I would be floored if USC makes the Pac-12 title game.
Floored? You'll be floored if USC wins like 10 games. That'll shock you. Yeah. What are they, preseason like 6?
The schedule and everything about this season just reeks 9-3 to me. 8-4, 9-3, like a step back here.
No, I could see it. I think like we've said multiple times, the Pac-12 is going to have a lot of really good teams.
They love cannibalizing themselves.
Yeah, and I could definitely see that happening. I think I see them at worst 10-2 going into the Pac-12 championship.
Okay.
But yeah, I guess so far we both got Texas, Clemson, and Oregon winning each of the conferences. We don't have the same teams in the conference championships, but we're agreeing so far on 3 of our 3 conference champs.
I think we're going to disagree on the 2 big ones that are coming up the next 2 weeks here. I don't think we're going to agree on the SEC and the Big Ten all that much. I think we're going to have some fun disagreements here, sir.
Oh, yeah, man. I'm ready for it. I'm ready for whatever Tennessee stuff you're going to talk.
I mean, I said 9-4 or 9-3 this year.
That's true.
I'm a reasonable Tennessee fan. I predicted them exactly right last year at 10-2. I even predicted the games that they would lose and win. last year.
That's
so
fair. You were all over the Tennessee prediction. I don't think you realized how heartbreaking it was actually going to be once it happened, but you were all over it.
Hey, I got to pull some in this program. I would say Matt Green for that guy down there in Tequila, Georgia. Matt Green for myself up here in Knoxville, Tennessee. I'm Chase Thomas, and that will do it for this edition of the Full Ride here on the Chase Thomas Podcast. And we'll be back next week.
Yes, sir.
Well done, nephew. Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.